Welcome to Insights on a Spiritual Path, a podcast where I explore the profound nature of spirituality and consciousness through enlightening conversations with seekers, practitioners, and teachers from around the world. I just can't feel my hands anymore. That's what a well-known medium confessed to me after a particularly intense session connecting grieving parents with their deceased child. This wasn't a metaphor. It was her nervous system had actually, literally shut down from energetic overload. And it's a phenomenon experienced by many professional mediums who don't know how to manage their energy properly. So in this video, which will be in 3 parts, we're going to be looking at the effects that mediumship can have on you on a physical basis, a psychological basis, and what we can do about them. And today in particular, I'm going to talk to you about the physical aspect of not managing your energy properly. The physical and emotional toll of mediumship remains largely invisible to the public eye. And today I'm sharing the most debilitating challenges faced by those who communicate with loved ones in the spirit world. Challenges that not affect just their work, but their ability to function in everyday life. Even if you've never believed in spiritual communication before, the human experience behind these struggles reveals something profound about consciousness itself. But before we explore the reasons for these challenges, I would like to share a personal experience with you, because it illustrates how the nervous system will shut down if you do work to extremes. This particular experience happened to me, and I'll never forget it. And it's never happened again, although it got close once because I didn't listen to the signs, but it has never actually happened again. And it was very dramatic at the time and very scary, and actually could have been very dangerous, life-threatening for me and for other people. So this is something we should talk about, how we manage our energy. So I had been at a church all day giving private readings. We had agreed that we would book 10 over the course of a day. Each sitting, each reading would last 30 minutes. Now, that is quite a lot. And I had already set down markers that I needed, 10 minutes in between each at least, just to have a drink of water, have a comfort break and close my mind off from one reading to the next. So we'd done the best that we could, even though it was a fairly packed day. But as the day progressed, it had gone extremely well, and word was getting out that I was there for the day and to see if they could just squeeze me in. And the president of the church, in between sittings, said, "You couldn't do one more, could you?" And it's very hard to let people down when you know there's someone who desperately wants a reading, and there you are. So I said yes. And it happened again. And I said yes. And this continued. By the end of the day, I had done 17 readings. And I was exhausted. And I was ready for home, which was a 2-hour drive away. So I did what I could. I got in my car. I had a coffee before I left. I had a sandwich. I felt like I was pretty much prepared for the journey. And I set off. About an hour into the journey, I'm driving along the motorway and I can feel I'm shutting down. My vision was not good. I didn't feel I could coordinate my body. I felt very nauseous. My head felt, I don't know how to describe it. Wasn't a headache, but it was like there was an immense pressure inside my skull. I felt absolutely dreadful, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was so lucky, because as I was starting to feel like I can't cope, I'm going to crash, a sign came up saying that there were some motorway services only a mile away. Well, I actually took my car into the hard shoulder lane, and I crawled along until we got to that turn off for the services. I pulled in to the parking area, and I closed my eyes, and the next thing, it was 6 hours later. And I woke up then and I felt a lot better. But it was like my whole brain, my body had just shut down, had refused to work, had refused to cooperate. And I just could not go on. If I had gone on, I would surely have crashed. I may have killed myself. I may have killed other people. I was definitely not safe on the road. I felt absolutely dreadful. And there were lots of other side effects that went along with it, which are probably a bit TMI for a video. But it was shocking. And after I recovered, I felt better. I managed to walk a little bit. I went into the services. I bought myself a cold drink, and I couldn't eat. I felt very nauseous still, but I could see perfectly all right. The pressure in my brain had released. My body was functioning, and I was starting to feel a little bit more like I was okay. I rang ahead to home and said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be late back, but I'm going to have to take this journey very slowly. When I felt safe to drive, I got in the car, and I was driving fine. I was okay so long as I wasn't having to go at breakneck speed. I was probably a very annoying driver that day. Everyone behind me probably wanted me to go faster, but tough. I got home an hour later, straight to bed, and the next morning I was a lot better. But it took about 3 or 4 days to recover fully. I actually that week had an appointment with my neurologist, who I see. And this was totally unrelated to the condition that I saw my neurologist for. But I described this, and he asked me lots of questions. And he said, I believe you had what was called a brainstem migraine. And I said, what would have brought that on? He said, you used all your reserves. He didn't know what I'd done for a living, and he didn't know what I'd done that day other than I'd been working, and I'd worked very hard. That's all I told him. And he said, you used all your reserves. You completely depleted your brain. And in doing that, you've actually remapped your brain, and you've brought on this migraine. And now it's gone back. Now you've rested. Well, this was all a bit over the top, over my head, so I didn't know what to think. And then I spoke to some other mediums more experienced to me, and they said, yes, you've used up all your reserves. It's your emotion, it's physical, and it's your energy. You haven't looked after your energy. And it's true, because I wouldn't say no, because I wanted to please. I didn't want to let people down. I saw the disappointed faces when I and ahed and said whether I could take on a final sitting, and eventually I relented. But yeah, I depleted all my reserves, and that's what did it. And it brought on something called a brain stem migraine. And I've never had it since, but I got close on another occasion when I was working at the college and too much was expected. And so I never did that again either. And the thing is, it's not that people force you to do it. You do it because you don't want to let people down. So please don't get the impression that other people are bad. However, what I would say is that if you are employing a medium to work, please do look after them, and please do make sure that they don't do too much. Be strict, because they may find it very hard to say no to someone who would be disappointed. But you can be that gate and say, I'm sorry, what we can do is ask them to come back another time, and we'll make sure you're booked in first as priority, and we'll take your number. So there's stuff that you can do there. So there is the responsibility first to yourself, and you take that. And there is the responsibility that if you're working for someone else, that they look after you as well. And if what you see is just someone who wants to make a load of money out of you, which I have had before, where it's been piled on one after the other, then, you really don't want to work with them. You have to be strict about this. So this energetic depletion goes beyond physical exhaustion. And if you've ever wondered why some mediums describe feeling as if they've run a marathon after a single reading session, you're about to find out. You see, the energetic cost extends far beyond conventional fatigue. What they experience represents one of the most misunderstood aspects of intuitive work. A unique form of depletion that science is only beginning to acknowledge. When a medium opens their sensory channels to connect with non-physical realms, they initiate a profound energetic exchange that taxes the body on multiple levels simultaneously. This isn't simple tiredness or mental fatigue. It's a comprehensive system drain that affects mediums neurologically, physically, and cellularly. The medium's body becomes a conduit for frequencies and vibrations that human physiology wasn't designed for extended periods of time. So we've always had mediumship. We've always had people who've communicated with the spirits, but they don't do it for extended periods of times. And if you go back into ancient and indigenous practices, there might be a special ceremony for it once, when there was a certain moon or season or festival. It wasn't something that you would do day after day for extended periods of time, which we do see some people doing now far too much. But what makes this phenomenon particularly intriguing is how consistent the physiological responses are across different practitioners. Mediums routinely report dramatic temperature fluctuations during sessions, sudden chills and cold spots, inexplicable heat waves through their bodies, even sensations of pressure. What can happen is their autonomic nervous systems demonstrate measurable dysregulation, spontaneously shifting between sympathetic and parasympathetic states without the normal environmental triggers that would explain such changes. Now, the most striking parallel in conventional science comes from research on extreme empathic resonance. When deeply empathic individuals witness others in distress, their nervous systems literally borrow the physiological state of the person they're observing. Heart rates can synchronize, breath patterns align, and even biochemical markers shift in response. For mediums, this phenomenon extends beyond the physical plane. They're actually resonating with energetic signatures that don't have physical bodies, creating an even more unusual strain on their systems. The neurological foundation for this capacity appears linked to what researchers identify as the highly sensitive person trait, HSP for short. Approximately 15 to 20% of humans demonstrate heightened processing sensitivity, which is an inborn tendency to notice subtle information at a deeper level than many others. This trait correlates strongly with intuitive abilities and might represent the neurological architecture that enables mediumship. So it's a very interesting area for researchers. The same brain that processes sensory information with unusual depth and complexity can become capable of detecting frequencies beyond ordinary human perception. This capacity creates what neurologists might consider a form of sensory gating deficit, where filters that normally protect us from overstimulation become porous, permeable. Brain regions involved in awareness, empathy, and self-other discrimination show heightened activity patterns, consuming glucose and oxygen at accelerated rates. It's as though the medium's brain is running sophisticated processing algorithms that demand extraordinary computational resources, quite literally burning through neurological energy reserves. So, it affects your brain. The physical toll manifests in ways that conventional medicine often misdiagnoses or dismisses. What appears superficially as psychosomatic complaints actually represents measurable alterations in autonomic functions, shifts in heart rate variability, irregular cortisol production and cycling. It can result in inflammatory markers that indicate genuine physiological distress. After particularly intense sessions, many mediums experience some temporary immune suppression, making them vulnerable to opportunist infections or reactivation of dormant viruses like shingles or Epstein-Barr virus. And over time, this creates what trauma researchers term allostatic load, the cumulative wear on bodily systems from chronic stress and inappropriate adaptive responses. For mediums, this often emerges as a pattern of post-session collapse, mysterious inflammatory conditions, autoimmune flare-ups, and energy fluctuations that conventional medical testing struggles to identify or address effectively. Their symptoms may mirror those seen in conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. It's interesting to me in my capacity as an intuitive and teacher that I frequently had severe flare-ups of rheumatoid arthritis after and sometimes during a week of teaching mediumship in large venues, where the emotional energy and trauma was particularly high. What's particularly fascinating is that these physiological responses occur regardless of whether the medium consciously believes in their experiences. The body responds to perceived energetic exchanges as though they were objectively real, suggesting that something beyond simple psychological explanation is occurring. Even the most skeptical researchers studying these phenomena have noted that the physiological markers of energetic depletion appear consistently, regardless of the medium's belief system or philosophical framework. So there you have it. It can be highly detrimental to become too empathic and involved. You have to look after yourself. It can work on your brain, on your immune system, and so many other issues involved. Do look after yourself, and in part 2 we'll look more at the psychological effect of not looking after your energy properly in your intuitive work. Join me in part 2 next time. Thanks for your support on Insights on a Spiritual Path, and please subscribe, share, and check out the great links in the description.